The document had 62 pages, all of them stamped. Adam Schiff set it on the table and did not say a single word. The hearing had been scheduled for 90 minutes. Standard oversight, budget review, routine responses from a Secretary of State who had spent 4 months perfecting the art of saying everything and answering nothing. But this morning was different. Schiff had a folder that Rubio had not seen, and the first page was an appointment document with a name that should not have been there. $220 million. That is the number nobody in Washington wanted to say out loud. And Schiff had been saying it for 6 weeks. If you want to know why a fired cabinet secretary ended up back inside the federal government with a diplomatic title, subscribe to Patel Report Files right now. We cover what the networks leave on the cutting room floor. The woman in question was Kristi Noem. The president had removed her from the Department of Homeland Security after a congressional audit uncovered a contract trail. That is the documented financial record of federal funds flowing to entities that could not be verified under standard oversight protocols. The total was $220 million. The removal had been public, the coverage had been loud, and then within 72 hours the coverage had stopped. Not because the story ended, because something much larger had replaced it. Marco Rubio's security detail was positioned at the door before 9 a.m. He arrived with 4 aides and 2 attorneys. His posture said he had done this before. His eyes said something else entirely. Rubio's right hand settled on the table before the chairman gave the session to order. The small motion of someone grounding himself before turbulence. Schiff was already watching. Nobody from the press pool had covered what happened between the Noem firing and the Doral summit. That 11-day window is where this story actually lives. The chairman opened the session with procedural remarks, 3 minutes on the committee's jurisdiction over foreign appointments, 2 minutes on the secretary's role in confirming special envoy positions, 1 minute on the nature of today's questions. By the time he finished, every lawyer in the room understood exactly where this was going. Rubio was the last to understand, or at least the last to show it. Schiff had the contract trail. That is what the room did not know yet. The $220 million audit trail that documented Noem's financial decisions during her time at Homeland Security. Federal funds, non-standard disbursement channels, entities that did not appear in the standard contractor registry. Schiff had requested the documentation through a congressional subpoena, a formal legal demand issued with the authority of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. 8 weeks before this hearing, the subpoena had been partially honored. Partially. What arrived was a privilege log, a document listing what had been withheld and why. The log had 47 entries, all marked with the same protection code, a code associated with one office. That office belonged to the Secretary of State. Something moved behind Rubio's eyes when Schiff opened the second folder. Not fear, exactly. The calculation of a man measuring distance between himself and an exit that no longer existed. Drop a comment right now. How many of those 47 entries do you think were actually protected by legitimate executive privilege, and how many were protected by something else entirely? Schiff had organized his questions in 4 categories. The first 3 were methodical, covering contract review, disbursement timelines, and oversight committee notification records. Rubio had answered all of them with measured language and careful non-specificity. He was good at this. He had been doing it since the first day of confirmation hearings. But Schiff had not yet touched the third folder, the one at the bottom of the stack, the one he had been building toward for 40 minutes. The third folder contained the Shield of the Americas appointment document. That is what the special envoy designation was called officially. Shield of the Americas Special Representative, reporting directly to the Secretary of State. The appointment had been signed on March 14th at the Doral Resort in Florida. The White House was calling it a strategic planning summit. That same summit generated the $1.5 trillion funding request for Operation Epic Fury. The president had described it publicly as a global deterrence initiative. The operation's announcement had consumed 6 days of news coverage. 6 days during which no outlet had reported on the appointment document sitting underneath it. But it was document 4 that Schiff had been saving. He set the Shield of the Americas appointment paper flat on the table, face up. The signature line was visible from the cameras. He did not say anything for 8 seconds. Then he looked at Rubio and asked one question. Secretary Rubio, this is the official appointment document designating Kristi Noem as Special Envoy for the Shield of the Americas program. The appointment is dated March 14th, and the firing was March 3rd. That is 11 days. This document bears your signature. Can you explain to this committee what legal review process was completed in those 11 days? Before a removed cabinet official was reappointed to a diplomatic role that carries security clearance access, Rubio looked at the document. He looked at his attorneys. Both of them had the same expression. There was no answer that would improve the situation. He looked back at Schiff and said the words that answered nothing. The appointment was made following appropriate executive branch protocols. Any further details involve ongoing national security considerations. Schiff set the privilege log beside the appointment document. It listed 47 entries under Code D protection, all originating from the same office. Not his word, his signature. Both statements were now in front of the committee simultaneously. The appointment had been made. The legal review timeline did not support the standard process, and the privilege log protecting the contract trail documentation had been filed from Rubio's own office. Only one of those things could be explained away. None of them could be explained away together. Rubio's jaw tightened at the number 11, the days between firing and appointment. He said the number quietly and precisely, and it landed with the weight of a date that someone had tried very hard to make disappear. The camera captured it. His senior attorney rose immediately. The chairman told him to sit down. What the networks chose to cover that week was the $1.5 trillion military operation, the calculated distraction, the tactical use of a massive military announcement to dominate news cycles and redirect public attention from a concurrent political event, had worked precisely as designed. 6 days of coverage about Operation Epic Fury, zero coverage about the appointment document, zero coverage about the contract trail, zero coverage about 47 privilege log entries originating from the same office that made the appointment. Rubio survived the first 30 questions by staying in his lane, procedural, measured, technically accurate, but Schiff had 5 more questions after that, each one shorter than the last. The special envoy position carries full security clearance access under State Department protocols. Schiff asked whether that access had been suspended during the contract trail audit. Rubio said security clearance decisions were handled through appropriate channels. Schiff asked which channels had reviewed a removed official's clearance eligibility before a new appointment was confirmed. Rubio said the process was consistent with executive branch authority. Schiff set a third document on the table. It showed the clearance reactivation timestamp dated March 12th, 2 days before the Doral Summit and 2 days before the appointment was signed. Rubio's hands had not moved from the table edge, but the right one had shifted forward slightly, the body finding anchor when the ground becomes uncertain. Nothing, Marco Rubio said in the next 4 minutes, could change what was now in the congressional record. 3 documents connected to one appointment, one reactivation, and one privilege log, all pointing to the same 11-day window, and all connected to the same signature. If what happened between March 3rd and March 14th matters to you, if you believe the American public deserves to know what happened inside that 11-day window, hype this video right now. The hype button is right next to like. You can hype 3 times a day for free. We have 7 days to push this into the top 100 most hyped videos on YouTube. Every single hype counts, so do it now. Then keep watching, because Schiff has 2 more documents that make the appointment look like the least important thing in that folder. The hearing shifted in its 43rd minute. That is when Schiff asked about the contract trail documentation itself, not the privilege log protecting it. The underlying documents, the $220 million disbursement record that had triggered Noem's removal. He asked Rubio whether the State Department had conducted its own independent review of those records before approving the appointment. Rubio said the appointment was made based on the president's direction. Schiff asked whether that direction had included a review of the contract trail. Rubio said personnel decisions were the president's prerogative. Schiff set the subpoena compliance letter on the table. The letter that documented exactly which records had been produced and which had not. 62 documents had been requested. 23 were produced and 39 were withheld under Code D privilege. Every withheld document connected to the same 2-year disbursement window. The room understood what that meant. Obstruction of justice in a congressional oversight context does not require criminal intent. It requires documented evidence of withheld material responsive to a lawful congressional subpoena. 39 documents, responsive, withheld, on the record. Like this video, if you believe $220 million deserves more than 6 days of distraction coverage, subscribe to Patel Report files for every document the networks choose not to cover. No anchor had mentioned the privilege log. No outlet had connected the clearance reactivation timestamp to the Doral Summit. No one had reported that the Shield of the Americas position had been created 41 days before the Doral meeting. The role existed before the Noem removal. The appointment slot was waiting. Schiff asked about that. The creation date of the special envoy position, February 1st. Noem was still at Homeland Security on February 1st. The position had been created while she was still serving in the administration, 6 weeks before she was fired, 5 weeks before the contract trail audit was completed. Rubio asked for a recess. The chairman declined. Rubio's attorney rose again, referenced ongoing national security implications. The chairman allowed a 5-minute break. During that 5 minutes, 3 staffers left the chamber. 2 of them were on their phones before they cleared the door. This channel exists because people who believe the contract trail deserves a full accounting choose to support it. If that connection between a fired official, a diplomatic appointment, and a $1.5 trillion operation matters to you, consider joining the 47 Club. Click the Join button below, because what comes next is the part they did not want anyone to see. The hearing resumed. Rubio returned to his seat with a revised posture and a revised set of answers. More careful, more layered with procedural justification. But the 3 documents were still on the table. The appointment, the clearance reactivation, the subpoena compliance letter. None of them had moved. None of them had been addressed. And none of them required Rubio's cooperation to mean exactly what they meant. Schiff closed the second folder, placed his hands flat on the table, said 4 words into the microphone. The record speaks for itself. We have a WhatsApp channel. If the contract trail and the appointment document matter to you, come find us there. Go to our YouTube profile and tap the WhatsApp button. Takes 5 seconds. 67 seconds of silence had passed between Schiff's first question about the appointment document and Rubio's first response. 67 seconds in a congressional hearing chamber with cameras running and a stenographer waiting. The stenographer had stopped typing. There was nothing to type. The silence was the record. Rubio's jaw worked once. His eyes moved to the left side of the table before the attorney rose. The small involuntary motion a body makes when it has processed the calculation and found no available exit. The cameras were positioned correctly. He looked at the signature line for 11 seconds, then at the cameras, then at the table. The 47 privilege log entries are still sealed. But the mechanism that sealed them, the Code D protection originating from the Secretary of State's office, is now documented, authenticated, and entered into the congressional record. Mechanisms can be challenged. Records do not disappear. Share this video, forward it to someone who watched 6 days of Operation Epic Fury coverage and never heard the words contract trail or 47 privilege entries. That is exactly what Patel Report Files is for. Hit the bell. The full subpoena compliance audit and the complete privilege log breakdown are coming to this channel. Do not miss them.